All right, so Three Ninjas Podcast, Domino, Hess Jones, Bobby, and it's done. It's here. It's complete. The Last Ronin, issue 5, is finally out. The series is complete.
The beach.
2 years. Yeah. 2 years. Finally here, it's finally complete. Or is it? I'm not sure. I would have to ask the questions. And the man on the line that we have right now, I'm going to ask the questions to, is the one and only. You've seen him. You heard him on the show a bunch of times. Mr. Kevin Eastman himself. Mr. Eastman, how are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. Thanks for having me back on. It's great to be with you guys again.
Great for you to be here. Now, like I said before, issue 5 is out.
Yep.
It's been 2 years. First thing I want to ask is, how are you mentally? You know, it's done. Is there a big weight off your shoulders? Like, how are you?
No, thanks for asking. It was very challenging, very difficult story in that, it was not only going back to an original concept that Peter and I wrote back in, 1987. So by the time we started, it was a 32-year-old idea that was conceived in the heyday of all things, Turtles comics, Turtles in the Mirage universe. That was pre-toys, pre-cartoons. We had just, that was just a, vague concept on the horizon at that time. So it was to do it right, to tell it right, and work with the right creative people. Like, Tom Waltz was fantastic, but then we had and unfortunately, Andy Kuhn, who was my first choice as series artist, had to step away for personal reasons. And then, finding the blessing of the Scorza brothers. And then I brought in my old buddy, Ben Bishop, for the flashback scenes. And the thing sort of evolved as it went along, page to page, issue to issue, because it was done very much like how Peter and I wrote and worked together in the old days, which was beating out a whole concept, treatment. But then the story evolved as I did the layouts, and so many things came together in that process, which is why it took as long as it did. They were 40-page stories, like the original comics, larger in size, larger in scope. It was a 200-page story, and it was just when you get to the point where I was grateful for the fans being tolerant for the delays, that I used it to say, I want this done right, and I want it done exactly the way I see it in my head, with this incredible team that I've been able to put together and work with. And so it was gonna take an extra month or an extra 2 months to get it done and done right, because it's gonna be forever as the final story that really is so strongly rooted in all things that Peter and I originally created. So it's great. It's a weight off my shoulders. It's I could not be more proud and more grateful for not only the guys, the folks that I worked with, but IDW and Nickelodeon, who were so supportive and thumbs up all the way around. They sort of made sure we had the room and what we needed to make it all that it could be. So a lot of blessings and a lot of things, but now it's sort of excited to get back into the regular ongoing series with the Armageddon game, and we've got some other things going on Turtle wise, as well as there may be some exploration. We've had a lot of discussions about other things in the multiverse component of the Last Ronin part of the multiverse. So we'll see where all that goes, because it's something that I'd like to see. I'd like to do. I'd like to continue being involved with it, of course.
A multiverse type question. I'm glad you said that. But before I get to that, how do you decompress? The project is out, it's a 30-plus-year-old idea. It's finally come to fruition. 2 years of waiting from the fans, we're just being tolerant and just waiting, like, hey, whenever it comes, it comes. Well, me personally, whenever it comes, it comes. I'm not, pushing you. I'm not going to write you anything nasty on Twitter or anything like that. But how does one decompress after, things like this?
Clean my studio. No, and it's funny because it's something that I've always done, and it goes back to some of the earliest days when Peter and I would do one of the issues. It was very similar. It was a 35 to 40-page story, and when you did it, it was all hands on deck, and you just everything sort of got pushed to this side, pushed to that side as you were focusing just on this thing. And then once you finish the issue and it went off to press, you could sort of breathe deep and then go around the studio and sort of pick up this and answer. There's a email or a letter or something I meant to answer 2 months ago or a year ago. So it's been a bit of that, and then that's been great since the issue went off. I've done clean the studio, which led to cleaning the garage and then reorganizing some other comic files and things, and then already hungry for what's coming next.
Hmm. Okay.
So,
Now, what have you learned, good or bad, in the last 2 years doing this project?
well, it's the process never changes. And I guess good. It's probably, I say it's good and bad, and both are good in the end, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
And that what I mean by is this process, the approach to the last run-in was very similar to the way Pete and I worked, and that it's just how I work. I'm very lucky to have worked within the IDW network and universe with Tom Walsh, who's very professional, and he does a finished script. We talk about the idea evolves. He does a finished script, and it goes to an incredible penciler, incredible inker, and then the whole team that puts everything together. This thing was just the way we did it in the early days. That the treatment, the outline that you're working from, is the foundation that you then build from as you're directing the movie or letting the story evolve naturally and organically, because pieces that were included in the final project weren't there when we started. Tom and I were having conversations and changing things sometimes on a Sunday night before it went to press on a Monday, and those kinds of things. So the process doesn't change. It's painful. It's not easy. And if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. It had to be done, and had to be done right. So that was probably the like you said, the good and the bad at the same time. Is the process doesn't change. It's very challenging and very rewarding, and when it's done right. So it's a mixed blessing, but at the end, both are good.
Right. Now, out of the 5 issues, do you have a favorite?
No, because it was always envisioned as a whole
Okay.
complete story, and in the middle 3 issues, which I designed and planned. We did to have the flashback sequences with Ben Bishop and the Scorza brothers wrapping around the core of the current story, but with the flashbacks, it was addressing what had happened to each of the turtles and the universe as pieces of the story came together. So the whole thing was a 200-page puzzle, and it was some tough stuff. It was pretty heartbreaking to to kill off some of your characters that and you wanted to do them right and do them justice and make it important to the story. Everything had to fit just so it was. So it was. I look at the piece as a whole piece as opposed to individual issues. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So now, I reread all 5 again, and one thing that I wanted to know that I saw maybe 3 or 4 people say online that I had to go do research myself. Is this a ode to The Dark Knight Returns that dropped in like 2012 at all?
Oh yes, 100%. And that
Okay.
I probably spent not probably. I've very specifically spent my entire life chasing Jack Kirby and Frank Miller, and following their innovations and their lead and their inspirations. Without trying to steal too much, but standing firmly on their shoulders and being inspired. But it was an approach very similar to Dark Knight, in that I wanted to be quote unquote sort of a final story, but it could lead elsewhere if that made any sense. Not that it was intended, but it was addressing a lot of things within the Turtles universe that had been there since issue 1, coming up on 40 years of pretty much if you took issue 1 of the Turtles in Last Ronin, that is the beginning of the story, and this is the end of that, what started in that story, with a few bits and pieces in between. But it was with respects and apologies, it was definitely a homage to all things Dark Knight, and that for the Turtle universe 100%.
It was done beautifully, so I commend you for that.
Thank you very
Now,
much.
TMNT, WB, and DC have always made like just a great marriage together when it came to video games and comics and so on and so forth. Have there been any talks to make this like an animated movie or a series or anything of that sort?
It's something that I would love. It was, it was sort of goes back to the things that sort of were developed in the original comic books that then evolved into different cartoons or movies and things. It was sort of a organic process, if you will, or it was what made sense. I know, Nickelodeon and Viacom and what they're doing with all things Turtles. They love all things IDW. And love Last Ronin, but I think that in their big picture, where Seth Rogen is working on his version of the Turtles, which is out next year, that they're sort of, managing the whole Turtle universe as you would, approaching a new season in the NFL or something. I don't know. So you get a plot and plan it in each of the games, and then build towards what makes the most sense. But I think that they definitely look at it like there's something here. We've got to do something with it. Is it a video game? Is it something that could be an animated event movie, kind of like the Batman Turtles, Batman versus Turtles project that Warner Brothers did, which I thought was pretty fantastic. So we'll see where it evolved to, but right now it's the comic just out and the collection coming out this summer, and we'll see where everything evolves. But I think it would make a great animated project. Personally, I think it'd be fantastic.
Yeah, definitely.
For that, older audience. Yeah,
definitely, because I feel like there's obviously all of us we grew up with the turtles that we know and love, like the goofy, fun loving, PC eating turtles. Like the real children like turtles, right?
Yeah.
I feel like there's a section of us that like the gruesome, like kind of dark, like the first movie, like the early comics turtles, where it was like, hey, we get to see like just these other sides of the turtles, and now that we're grown, we didn't stray away from like the kid fun nature of the turtles, but we also want to see something where it was like, hey, they can get serious if they want to.
Yeah, no, that's what was been so much fun working within the IDW Turtle universe. Because the Turtles. A lot of people talk about multiverse this, multiverse that this year, and it's always been something in existence in comics, but also for the Turtles specifically since day one, we've always had the black and white comics, we had the cartoon series, and then we had the movies, which were kind of in between, a combination of both. Lucky to have all those. But when IDW approached the comic series, they wanted it more firmly rooted, including all the other Turtle universes, but firmly rooted in the Mirage Studios universe, where it was edgier, intended for that original audience. And that's what the comic book attracted, was some of the original fans that still might enjoy some of the other universes, but they really like the comics, and they like the edgier pieces. And then with Last Ronin, it went to made that jump from, say, the Batman series to Dark Knight. This is the Turtle series to the Dark Knight version of Turtle. So we get to really embrace that and take it as far as we could. And and kudos and thanks and respects to Nickelodeon, Viacom, because they really let us do stuff that we pushed it as hard as we could, and they were accommodating in more ways than I thought they would be. There's some pretty heavy stuff in those in that series, but they supported it, and they knew it was for the original fans, and that's what makes them so great to work with.
Mm-hmm. And how much of the fanfare do you actually see, or do you actually, I guess, take heed to? Because, like I said, there's a lot of forums, comments, just message boards, just YouTube channels just dedicated to what we want to see. But what we want, we're not necessarily going to get. So how much of that do you actually pay attention to, and then try to give us?
Well, it's funny, is I'm a total old school guy, not only from how I draw. I still do everything hands-on, I still do everything physical, I still everything's sort of pretty old school. Tom Waltz is a lot more savvy as far as he goes into the forums, he reads stuff. So a lot of times when we're talking or brainstorming and this and that, he's my conduit to just what the temperature is for what the fans are looking for, what they kind of like, and this and that. Because to me, it's my exposure to it has always been comic conventions, and that's what I missed, as we all missed the last couple of years. Is that when I go to shows, I would do my panels and questions, or just most of it's just fans in line when by the time they get up. I talk too much anyway, but I love to chat with them. And what did you think of this? What did you think of that? What's what would you like to see, kind of thing. And so more direct feedback. But it's good to be sort of aware of it, but it's also, when it comes down to some of the writing and the creative aspect, it's not really something that I let influence the direction of where we're going. Like, it's never been said for the entire history of IDW Comics, like, hey, if you killed off this character, we could sell more copies, or, hey, let's do this. And it's always been story driven, story first. And then, as that comes together, that's the way you make it go. So and that's, again, a great compliment to Nickelodeon and Viacom and other people, that it's like they didn't pressure you to do corporate things to increase sales or gimmicky and stunts. They just supported the series as it was. So it's good to be aware of it, but it's when it comes time to do the work, it's just embrace the creative people we work with, and then try to tell a great story and try to tell it well.
Right. Now, one thing I was told to ask you in regards to crossovers, because we love the Ghostbusters and the Batman and those type of crossovers. Will we ever see a Street Sharks crossover with the Ninja Turtles?
Which one?
Possible? Street Sharks. Is that ever possible?
That's funny. No, I remember there was there was what was the other? It was Biker Mice from Mars.
Biker Mice from Mars. It was Mummies Alive. There was Street Sharks. It was all types of stuff.
All types of stuff. So yeah, I don't think there's anything in the books, but because people have asked me sort of they asked me what I'd like to see as a turtle crossover, and one dream is come true pretty much with the Turtles Batman crossover with what James Tynion and Freddie Williams did, and being part of that, mostly covers and stuff, but they just did such a fantastic job. So that was really one thing off the bucket list. Turtles Daredevil, of course, would be that's a huge bucket list.
Yeah,
then
a great one.
Even going a bit further down the rabbit hole is Jack Kirby's Commandy was a huge influence to me when I was younger. The first movie I ever saw in the theaters was Planet of the Apes, and Jack Kirby's Commandy concept was pretty much a furtherance of that kind of universe where animals rule the planet and the humans had been reduced to slaves, if you will, fodder or and so it was sort of in a world run by mutant animals, the turtles being taken into that world would be a pretty interesting opportunity to tell some pretty fantastic stories. So that's on the list. But I'd say Turtle Daredevil nothing would be greater than that right now.
Okay. Now, biggest question I had was the epilogue, right? Now, was that put there as like foreshadowing something, or is that just left up to like interpretation for the fans to maybe make some fan fictions, or was it like, what was it, if you can say?
It was definitely something that much like a lot of components, a lot of pieces within the story grew out of the development, the creation of the story. Touched on briefly was as things that we outlined of, here's the beginning, here's the middle, and here's the end of the story. So we knew the key pieces, but then the journey of how to get there changes as the story evolves and as you construct it. And as we went through that universe, it kind of reminds me of even going to the addition of Jenica into the Turtles ongoing series. Tom and I both wanted to bring a female turtle into the mix, but only if it made sense and if it only made the right kind of sense. And Jenica as a character was introduced in Turtles issue 51. She became popular not only with us, we loved her as a character, and she evolved as a character. So by almost 50 issues later, Turtles 95, she's and we had planned it for 2 years prior to, she became the fifth turtle, the girl turtle. And so it was an evolution of a great idea, a splinter in your mind that you had to see resolved and had to evolve naturally as a story element. And so as we looked at where the universe would end in Last Ronin. We had a specific ending, of where Casey Marie was and where April was, and we had an idea that we wanted to see if it made sense as we put pieces of it together. So it was kind of there, but we wanted to see if it worked. So I think by the middle of the series, we knew, let's close all the doors to the whole story, but let's leave one of those doors open that it can have another evolution to it. It's like in the Dark Knight series, Batman lived. And that was sort of, so within that universe, the old man Dark Knight lived, and there was going to be a continuation of that series with that person as a character. I definitely from day one didn't want that. I wanted the finale to be the finale of all things in the original universe. And then if there's going to be a continuation, I wanted the mantle to be passed carefully and thoughtfully with those pieces, Splinter's journal and the philosophies that Michelangelo left Casey Marie with. And that she's also has evolved as a character into a mutated character. So that's still a bloodline and is still a family aspect, but it gives an opportunity to tell great stories in a foundation that we've created, which some pretty exciting stories could be told. So we talked a lot about what that can be and where we're going to go with it, but we're sort of letting that evolve. We've turned immediately back to all the coolness that's going on in the Turtles Ongoing with what Sophie Campbell's doing and has been doing wonderfully. And we've been working, and we developed Tom had this idea for the Armageddon game, which brings Rat King back, and a lot of the characters that we'd had developed and evolved to a specific point post, by the time we get to issue 100. We're sort of get to have a foot in both worlds, which is pretty fantastic right now.
Right. Now, in this series, was there anything that was supposed to happen that didn't, and was there anything that wasn't supposed to happen that ultimately made it into the story? Because I saw a lot of predictions where it was like, final fight is gonna happen, then before the final strike, Ace Marie is gonna come in, XYZ is gonna happen, yada yada. So, any secrets, any tidbits of what didn't make it, what was supposed to make it that didn't, things like that?
No, and I say that no, and it was actually it's funny. There's
pretty finite,
pretty finite, but it was it was things like and this is a spoiler, but in a good way. The fans will love it. For the collection, we added 2 pages to one of the sequences where we had the evolution of the battle wagon, and that I'd always wanted this big 2-page spread of when April finally shows up at that big moment when they're attacking Baxter Stockman's fortress, where you get a full big shot of the battle wagon in action. So but we just ran out of pages because we wanted the story. We needed to hit certain story elements, so we had to make certain things fit, and had to lose that. But we were able to add that back into the thing. But as far as moments and beats of where characters started, where they ended, and what the possibilities were, they were addressed how we wanted to have them addressed in the story, in the series.
Okay. All right. So I didn't want to take too much of your time, so I didn't write down that many questions. But
no, that's good. I think it's what's been fun is about this stuff in our ongoing discussions is as things evolve, we get to gives me an excuse to come back and hang out with you guys again.
Yeah. So compile all of that. We probably got like an hour worth of content.
There you go. We'll do a special. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. So, that'd be nice. So now a hardcover is coming out in July.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of all 5 issues in just one hardcover book.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so that's coming out in July, and there's been we did a little bit of a remastering of a few, resizing some pages, and there was a few tweaks and nudges. But besides adding the 2 extra pages, it's pretty much it's all there, and it's going to be in a really wonderful hardcover format. Ben did the package art for the cover and stuff, so it'll be a gallery of stuff in between. But I'm sure there'll be other collections down the road where we'll show some of, I did a couple hundred original concept designs and all my original layouts and some of the original story notes. So I'm sure there'll be a more deluxe expanded version if the fans want it. We've got the material, so we'll see where that goes. But the hardcover in July is going to be awesome. It's going to be nice to have it in one one book.
Yeah, just one book.
No.
Yeah, so I can put everyone else in plastic, and I can just put that hardcover book somewhere. All right, I'll probably hang it up where I don't know.
Yeah, I think we both have the same problem. It's like,
Yeah, yeah, I'm trying to
something
find.
has to go into storage,
Yeah, something has to, go. I'm trying to collect more of these. I gotta find the other two, but
Bless you.
task in itself. But yeah, that's all I have. What else is next? What's
No, I
happening
think
next?
we get another one. Yeah, no, I think right now it's Armageddon game ongoing series. I just finished still doing some fun stuff for Marvel covers. I'm doing a really fun project with Wizards of the Coast, a couple illustrations, but mostly it's all things Turtles. But one of the things I'm excited to be back fully on to is the Drawing Blood series that David Avalone and Ben Bishop and I have been working on. I stole Ben from Drawing Blood to have him do these centerpieces for issues 2, 3, and 4 of Drawing Blood. So now Ben's back on finishing volume 2 of series 2 of Drawing Blood, and I'm doing my pages, and that whole arc is 12 issues when it's said and done. So it's personal projects, turtle projects, a little bit of everything, and that's the fun stuff of what I get to do in my day is get to mix it up a little, and my family gets to see me more often.
Yeah, that's always good, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so shouts to Ben. I had to make sure I wore this shirt. It's the first time I actually wore this shirt, so
that's awesome.
that's
a
what the
good one.
Ben Bishop, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all I have. As always, I appreciate your time. Appreciate the turtles as always. Appreciate the series. Hope to see more. I'm gonna be picking up everything else that you do like always. But
Appreciate it.
yeah, appreciate your time and thank you for coming on the show once again.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. And I just say, leave you with this is that if anybody wants to know where we're at, what we're doing, go to kevineastmanstudios.com because we're back out doing conventions again. Yay! So hopefully we'll see you all out there live and in person, which is nice again. So find out where we are, what we're doing, and what's going on at Kevin Eastman Studios. And otherwise, we'll talk to you again, my friend. Good chatting.
Have a good one.
Cheers, man.